In 2001, HBO produced a series based on the Stephen Ambrose novel, A Band of Brothers. And since its release, I have viewed it as the iconic cinematic accomplishment that taught me what our truest heroes did in the face of tyranny and why they are so special. It brought to life the actions of those who I had only seen as old men. And even today, I straighten this picture of my grandfather every time I pass by just to show respect. HBO also produced a series in 2004 based on Rolling Stone journalist Evan Wright's book, chronicling his experiences as an embedded reporter during the 2003 initial invasion of Iraq. The title of his book and that series, Generation Kill. Such a contrast, right? From the greatest generation to the sadist generation, it appears as our grandfathers went to war and lost their innocence, the latchkey kid, video game generation like me, who grew up glued to ever more violent and graphic virtual world media, found our innocence in war, because for the first time, the results of our fighting were in real blood, and real lives lost, and real friends gone forever. Nothing has shaped my life more significantly than the actions of 9/11. It's my Pearl Harbor, my December 7th, my entire generation's December 7th. Never forget. That's what we said. That's what my grandparents said about Pearl Harbor. Heck, let's jump with Mr. Peabody in the Wayback Machine and visit Sam Houston. Americans dedicated themselves to remember the Alamo. Every age is shaped by certain events. And I want to bring to our awareness just how these events are so generationally sacred. But for us here today, we were alive September 11th, 2001. The children born in that year, of which I have one, all now have their driver's license. How old does that make us feel? The veterans of this era, the post-9/11 veterans, are parents, professionals, and present all throughout the communities of America. Let me tell you about us. The strongest character trait shared by military members today and post-9/11 veterans is that we are all volunteers. After World War II, the veteran population was 12% of the total population in the United States. Today, the post-9/11 veterans represent 1% of the population. We're 11% women who can now serve in combat roles. So many of my sisters in arms who maybe display a car sticker of a unit they serve in or have a veteran license plate hear all too frequently, "Tell your husband thank you for his service." We are a generation of veterans privileged to fight gender bias. The global war on terror relied heavily on citizen soldiers, National Guard and reservists, who left civilian jobs to deploy multiple times over 10 to 15 years. Post-9/11 veterans are the perfect measure for the health of communities because we represent a cross-section of America. We come from rural towns and sprawling suburbs, inner cities. We come from every varying degree of affluence. And our desire to volunteer doesn't end with military service. When we come home, we want to be part of our community. Almost instinctively, we turn to veteran service organizations of that community. Veteran service organizations are almost as old as America itself, springing up from the Revolutionary War to establish charities to help ex-soldiers with disabling wounds and injuries. But it wasn't until after the Civil War that veterans got organized nationally and began to wade into politics. Union troops formed the Grand Army of the Republic. Their philosophy was if the government wouldn't help them, they'd help themselves. But they weren't all inclusive. In 1899, soldiers returning from the Spanish-American War found themselves excluded from the Grand Army of the Republic, and they formed the VFW, the Veterans of Foreign Wars. And in 1950, when the last Union vet passed away, the Grand Army of the Republic died with him. When I returned home from Iraq, I wanted to be part of my community. And so I joined the VFW out of a sense of appreciation for the legacy of the organization. When thousands of troops returned from the trenches in World War I and had a difficult time adjusting financially to civilian life, they joined the VFW. That resulted in a mass mobilization and even a march on Washington to demand better government services for veterans. To keep similar discontent from occurring after World War II, the American Legion proposed the largest social welfare program ever proposed, the GI Bill of Rights. To historians, its passage marked the peak of American Legion and VFW power. And these organizations saw it as an opportunity to create their organizations into something intergenerational and long-lasting. But their hopes were short-lived. Vietnam fractured their political power in a way. The Vietnam War veterans not only returned home thanklessly, but were the victims of a shift in pop culture that had never been experienced within this American experiment. War movies were nothing new, and neither was depicting the emotional toll war took on people. But 1980s cinema really stained the fabric of America by portraying veterans as deranged, dissident, disgruntled, and defeated. This became the status quo. Pop culture really did society a disservice, and for a long time we were absent positive, popular veteran role models. This affected the veteran community, and they began to build fences around the places they called home. The classic definition of community is associated with a physical place. Hence, many of our service clubs are branded with a place like the Boise Rotary Club or the Kiwanis Club of Salt Lake or American Legion Omaha Post. Just like me, the younger generation entered these veteran gathering places across America. And reports began to surface through social media that as the emerging generation of veterans walked through the doors, they found exclusive cliques of generationally divided veterans ranting in rooms with nicotine-stained walls and the soft hint of whiskey and bacon. The leaders of legacy veteran service organizations are Vietnam veterans. Many of these veterans were drafted and have a different view of volunteerism. And while these organizations have a proud heritage of effective policymaking, the more tangible aspect of social activism was poorly communicated and drowned out by the shabby meeting place. Initially, I thought a better place to meet was the answer. The VFW post in my hometown was one meeting in a dingy building, and I wasn't alone in wanting to improve our situation. Like many American communities, my town is home to a Carnegie Library. Built in 1913, it was the city of Caldwell's library for 60 years and continued to serve our community for decades until it was sitting vacant and close to useless. 100 years later, it's receiving a new lease on life as a massive renovation began to change the old library into the Caldwell Veterans Memorial Hall. The idea made sense in our community, and civic leaders were excited for the building to find new purpose. Arthritic hands, trifocals, attitudes, unpaid hours off work all came together as the veterans of Caldwell began to do the hard work of renovation. And when the capabilities of us veterans fell short, do you know who stepped in? It was the people who cared about that place. Service clubs, the Caldwell Elks and the Caldwell Lions, Rotarians and Optimists, city officials. There were philanthropic foundations, corporate volunteer teams, families, Eagle Scouts, technical professionals, all became stakeholders in seeing this project through. But this renovation took us 4 years and gave me special insight into the shared struggle our service clubs are facing, an obvious absence of the emerging generation. Author Robert Putnam documented that attending service club meetings of all varieties declined 58% from 1975 to 2000. This trend continued and even accelerated in the 21st century. Putnam notes that it's part of an overall trend by Americans who have 43% fewer family dinners. 35% fewer of us have friends who just drop in to see us at our homes. Unfortunately, most service club leaders are typically in office for 1 year. So they shoot for a short-term quick fix to attrition like a membership drive. But new membership is irrelevant if an organization can't retain them. I hear it all the time. I can't make your meeting, but let me know what day the service project is and I'll be sure I'm there. This begs the question, is the format of our service club or veteran service organization outdated? Is the weekly luncheon or monthly meeting a productive format? Are the rituals in our meetings making sense to younger veterans? Americans now connect online, so they may not appreciate the time investment of a weekly luncheon or a monthly meeting. The emerging generation of Americans now define community by their affinity, the gay community or the tech community. Even college alumni groups now tout themselves like independent countries, such as Bronco Nation at Boise State University. The J.A. and Catherine Albertson Family Foundation was the genesis for a veteran affinity in Idaho. It started with Mission 43. Mission 43 is a partnership designed to give currently serving military, former military, and military spouses in Idaho, the 43rd state, the resources for a successful transition to civilian life. While a minority of military veterans develop post-traumatic stress disorder, mental health theory and research with military veterans has focused almost exclusively on PTSD and its treatment. In contrast, many, and by some accounts most veterans experience high levels of stress during their transition into civilian life. And yet, transition stress has received scant attention. By bringing together world-class organizations, Idaho's post-9/11 servicemen and women and their families have the resources to excel academically, in their next career, and in the community. The community result hasn't been a geographic location or card-carrying membership in an organization, but rather a tribe. Today's veterans are attracted to brands engaged in social activism and prefer peer feedback and collaboration more than top-down guidance. They seek to engage local communities in ways that provide meaningful physical service outdoors and allow the opportunity for younger veterans to interact with each other as well as the folks that they're serving. In identifying and removing the obstacles that service club meetings created, we found that what the emerging generation wants in physical meetings is for the environment to be fundamentally social, fundamentally conversational, and fundamentally less formal. People gravitate to places containing others that awaken their curiosity, encourage them to think and learn, and accept openness to new and inspiring ideas and alternatives. We found that these elements are essential to creating an environment where people are willing to invest their time and also want to bring their families. Nothing is more American than a service club. Service clubs and veteran service organizations are an American innovation that has evolved into a worldwide institution. And though vibrant across the globe, the loss of membership in the United States is a loss of social capital and civic engagement. Frenchman Alexis de Tocqueville rode all over the United States in the 1830s and was struck by the impact that fraternal, religious, and civic organizations had on American democracy and determined that they made communities better, stronger, and more engaged. It is imperative we reinvent. That may mean passing the torch to an emerging generation of leaders capable of reinventing our organizations to meet their needs. Today's veterans build community differently by identifying with our affinity. We volunteer. We attract brands engaged in social activism and seek for peer-led activities that better the conditions around us. If you ask today's veterans what you can do for them, you'll likely hear us respond, "Let me show you what I can do for you." Thank you.